Protest at Fairfax this morning with a group called CANdo, Australia's Voice, presenting the chairman with a letter demanding a place on the board for Gina Rinehart, the company's largest shareholder. Joining me now is the Executive Director of CANdo, Jai Martinkovits, from our Sydney City studio. Jai Martinkovits, thank you very much for your time. You want Gina Rinehart on the Fairfax board. It's certainly not the general line that we've been hearing lately throughout the media. Why?
Celina, we feel that there's a certain responsibility that Fairfax has to give her due and fair representation on the board as their largest shareholder. Now, we see that really we have these two journals who are significant journals of record under the strong proprietary control of the media families, and we see that Gina Rinehart has really offered what we see as a hand of salvation to be able to restore them to their former glory, both financially and in terms of their editorial content.
Well, editorial content you mention, and some would say that you should be presenting a letter to Gina Rinehart asking her to guarantee Fairfax's charter of editorial independence. Wouldn't that kind of help resolve this conflict that is ongoing between the board and whether to give Gina Rinehart a seat or the additional seats that she's also asked for, it's understood?
We see a pincer approach as the concern. What we see on one hand is that there's this editorial independence which is to be guaranteed under a Charter of Independence, of which she is expected to subscribe. This is the very regime which has led these two journals of record to be in the position that they are today.
But many would say it's the very regime as well that you talk about returning the Sydney Morning Herald and the Age to the great newspapers that they once were, that editorial independence and that charter and that understanding of the relationship between the board and the editorial side of those newspapers, that also created those great newspapers.
Well, that's absolutely right. I think that the people who own these newspapers recognise that they do need these talented journalists to produce that content, and will largely give them free rein, but will provide that direction, which I think is firstly necessary in terms of ensuring that the news is not biased. It should be presented as news and not as opinion, and that the opinion is kept for the opinion pages. And let's ensure that it's balanced. We're also seeing the other arm of this pincer approach, which is Ms Gillard and Mr Conroy considering to introduce special legislation which would be supposedly a public interest test. And of course, who determines the public interest? We think that the only people who should be judging the newspaper are its readers. And if we see that there is one way or another that it's not happening as it should, readers will walk. And we're seeing that they're walking at the moment in terms of subscribing to these two papers, and that they should be the ultimate judges.
OK, I just want to put the letter up so that we can have a quick look at that letter. You weren't able to give that to Roger Corbett, I understand?
No, unfortunately Mr Corbett was not in the building, but that was accepted on his behalf, and no doubt he'll consider it and respond in due course.
How much support do you have, do you think? What's the numbers surrounding CANdo, Australia's Voice?
Australia's Voice CANdo, we have thousands and thousands of members. Of course, our members come from right across the country, and we feel that we're representing what's the mainstream of Australia.
So you think Gina should be given that place on the board? What about those other additional places that it's understood she's asked for?
She is the largest shareholder of Fairfax. Let's not forget that she's a woman with amazing business experience, and I believe that she would make a positive contribution. I'm not saying, of course, that everything that she says should be adopted, but she should be given fair and due representation on the board, at least the one place, and if not more, as the largest shareholder.
Jai Martinkovits from CANdo, Australia's Voice, thanks very much for explaining that protest and the presentation of that letter this morning.
Thank you, Celina.
25 minutes past 12, you're watching Newsday.